I absolutely love Dishonored. I played it right when it came out in 2012, and it is the game that got me to really kind of think of a lot of games in this different light. Did you want me to list them all off, or did you just want me to like say one, talk about it, say one, talk about? How did you want me to do
Yeah, if you
that?
don't mind just saying one, then we'll both kind of go back and forth until we feel like we're finished.
Alrighty, perfect. So yeah, so Dishonored was kind of my introduction to this style of game that I never really knew, and I know that there's a bunch of things like you could call like stealth action adventure RPGs or action, or I guess action games with stealth elements. There's a million ways you can word it, but I actually have a video on my channel that is kind of my own personal word I came up for a lot of these games, and I call them mechanical sandboxes. Because when you think of sandbox games, they're usually games where they slap you in the middle of a big world and they say, here's a bunch of stuff, do what you want. That's what, the whole idea of a sandbox, that's what it was named after. A kid gets dropped into a sandbox with some shovels and pails, go to town, build a sandcastle, dig yourself a hole, do what you want. And mechanical sandboxes was this thing. I really only made it up like months ago because I was like, I want to call this something because I want to make a video about these, but I don't know what to call them. And it's games that use their mechanics in a similar way as a sandbox. Like instead of putting you a big world, say go have fun, they'll put a bunch of enemies, hand you a bunch of toys, and say kill them how you'd like. But make it, it can be as simple and crude or as amazingly, fascinatingly interesting to watch. And that is kind of what Dishonored started for me. And so games that I lumped into this would be things like the Far Cry games. I still am able to find fun in the Far Cry games. I know a lot of people don't love the series, and I get that. It hasn't done a lot of innovation lately, but the whole ability to like chain things, or you throw a knife up in the air, run over, stab one person, shoot another person, the knife lands in someone else's head, like, all the kinds of crazy combos of stuff you can do. And like another sort of term that I came up for these games, like Dishonored, Far Cry, is PvE playmaking games. Because a lot of games, they kind of promote either passive play or a very rigid, strict play style, which isn't a bad thing. Games that have a very firm defined, you know firmly defined play style to them, totally good, and that has helped a lot of games. But there's something about this whole like playmaking idea in games where it says, here's a bunch of tools, you can play this situation as sloppily or as clean as you'd like. We're just curious what you'll think. There's no penalty for doing it. There's not much penalty for doing it poorly. You're just going to look amazing if you do it really cool. And that's what I think those PvE playmakers are. And I think Dishonored was my first game that really helped me to experience that. Where, have you ever played Dishonored?
I have it. I have tried it. I don't think I was patient enough with it. I really probably
Mm.
should try it again.
There's a. Do you do recommendations for other channels on this channel before I say anything?
Oh, yeah, go ahead if you want to.
Give a watch to a YouTuber called Stealth Gamer BR. Watch his playthroughs of Dishonored, and you'll go, "Oh, that's how you're supposed to play."
Oh, okay.
He does these insane chains of using abilities on like just the craziest ways, where he'll start running, and then he'll fire a bolt randomly up in the air. You're like, why did he do that? And then he'll start up a fight, he'll teleport behind someone, or like, well, not behind, but like up in the air, drop down, stab them, then turn around with the gun, fire at somebody else, then somebody else runs up to him, he blocks their attack, and then he stands there, like, okay, why is he just standing there? And then the bolt he fired earlier will hit them in the head. You're like, what? How did what?
Huh, so the
What?
the game keeps up with the rendering of the bullet so it can fall back down?
Yeah. hmm Everything, nothing de-renders. And
Wow.
so a lot of the things you can do are, it opens up a lot of different, like I say, plays you can make. So instead of just running up and, giving 3 backstabs, okay, cool, I guess, you can instead do all of this crazy stuff. Like you can stop time, fire a bunch of crossbow bolts at a group of enemies, and then they all get, and then when you de-stop time, all of them get hit at once. And it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But then, as you're chaining more and more things together, it looks, cooler and cooler, and there's like a huge skill ceiling gap where, yeah, you can play it as simply as possible and you can probably pass the game perfectly fine. But if you want to look like the coolest, the coolest of the cool, and really like get that feeling of, oh, I am a supernatural ninja assassin. Oh, all I had to do was teleport 7 times, completely bamboozle them, and then kill 5 people with only one swing of my sword. Of course. So,
yeah. What does this game accomplish? What ingredient does it accomplish better than other games like it, like Deathloop and Thief, I think, is another one?
What I think it accomplishes best is a bit of visceralness, and like one of the things I like Deathloop, I got about halfway through it or so, but which is always funny to think of a game that constantly repeats from the start. But Deathloop it felt a little bit slower. Like everything felt a little more deliberate, which isn't a bad thing. But a lot of like the kill animations were just like that little bit too long, or they just didn't have like that feeling of flow to them. And Thief, I think, was also, I think if I remember my time that I played Thief, it was relatively a lot slower and a bit more emphasized stealth. Dishonored said, yeah, you can stealth your way. You can go through the entire game without killing anybody. I've done I think it's called a shadow playthrough, where you don't kill a single person, you don't touch anything, you do all the non-lethal assassinations, and that's how you beat the game, is not a single person even knew you were there. But the Dishonored, what it does is it has so much more of kind of like a curve to what you're able to do with it, and everything is so much punchier and so much more impactful but quick. Like the stabs, they're all very, this is going to make me sound like a psychopath. The stabbing is very well animated.
Wow.
Where you'll grab somebody and then you'll just like kind of tilt their head to the side, stick the sword in their neck, and then drop the body. It's really quick, really visceral, super quick. In Deathloop, I remember you'd like wrap your hands around their head and then like do one twist and then another one to like snap their neck. And instead of like that crunchierness, this sounds so horrible. The more I talk, please do not get me sectioned. But in Deathloop, it's a lot crunchier and like, oh yeah, like a one snap and then finally snap the neck. But in Dishonored, it's so slick and clean. Like there's one animation that's really, really solid, where you'll grab their head and just kind of do a really quick little slide across the throat, but it's really, really smooth. I know this sounds horrible, but I promise it's about gameplay.
Okay, so Dishonored doesn't have a specific way you can apply as much creativity as you want to get through it?
There is a much higher ceiling. I guess there's obviously, eventually you're going to hit the walls or the limits of what the game can allow you to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there is so much more of a range, where instead of I'd say like, let's say Deathloop, you can do crazy cool stuff from like 20 to 120 on the coolness scale. Dishonored, you can do stuff from like 1 to 1,000.
Nice. Okay.
Ridiculous, some of the things that I've seen. And so yeah, Deathloop didn't quite grab that for me. It was still a cool game. I still liked a lot of other stuff about it, but Dishonored really is where I will always come back to. The powers are so unique, they're so creative, and the way they flow into the rest of the gameplay is just top notch for me.
So Dishonored 2 didn't really meet your expectation?
That's going back to my first comment. Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider kind of fall into one thing, but Dishonored is, I think, my favorite of all of the three.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've sparked something in me to go try it out again sometime.
Oh, I assure you, like, give a few watches to some like really, really, you know, extremely skilled players of Dishonored, and you will be so inspired to want to even begin to replicate 1% of what they're doing. Yeah, I promise you, you'll love it.
Nice. Okay.